What's up? I'm OBG. So what's the hype with Blanton Bourbon? Well, there's a lot of things that have lined up over the years, and there is a long history about this bourbon that really define why everybody is crazy about this. But to understand that, we have to go all the way back to 1881, when Colonel Albert Bacon Blanton was born on a farm next to the Buffalo Trace Distillery outside Frankfort, Kentucky. Back then, the distillery was called OFC Distillery, and an acronym for Old Fire and Copper. Blanton, who finished high school early, joined the distillery as an office boy at the age of 16 in 1897. Throughout the next 4 years, young Albert was promoted several times, working the warehouse, receiving, the mill, distillery floor, and in fact, Blanton did gain expertise in all the departments of the business, including the business office, which was where the power was. In 1904, the distillery was renamed to the George T. Stagg Distillery. And in 1912, Albert was appointed as superintendent of the distillery floor, the bottling facility, and the warehousing. After 34 years of hard work at the distillery, Albert was promoted as president of the company in 1921. Colonel Blanton did pass in 1959, and in a tribute to his endless dedication to the business, Elmer T. Lee, a protege of Albert, named the world's first single barrel bourbon after him. Now that bourbon was introduced in 1984. Now, Blanton was the first single barrel bourbon that was marketed, meaning there's no blending of any other barrel, nor is there neutral grain spirit, coloring, or flavoring for that matter. Each barrel is dumped individually and hand bottled. There's 8 different jockey stoppers at the top, and they all have a different letter, and if you line them up correctly, it spells Blanton. Now, all of the barrels in Blanton's are from the famous Warehouse H that was commissioned by Colonel Blanton himself after the Prohibition era. Now, this warehouse is famous since it has a metal structure and isn't a brick warehouse like all of the other ones that are owned by Buffalo Trace, making the whiskey age much faster since the temperature rises and falls, making the bourbon age faster, of course. Now, this is aged for a minimum of 6 to 8 years. They don't really tell us how old the actual bourbon is in here, since the master distiller goes around, tastes the barrels, and decide when the bourbon is actually matured enough so that they can start bottling it. Now, this whiskey retails for $150. Now, $150 is a lot of money. A lot of money for some bourbon here. Now, there is multiple expressions of Blanton. The first one is the original Blanton at 93 proof, and this one is the one that came out in 1984, and it retails for $150. Then there's the Special Reserve, or the Green Label as it's called, and this has a proof of 80, and this one retails for $150. Then there's the Black Edition. Now this one is only released in the Japanese market, and this one has a proof of 80, and this one retails for about $200. Then there's the Silver Label. Now, this was produced for the duty-free market, but is no longer available, unless you find a bottle at auction, and this has a proof of 98. Then there's the Gold Label. Now, this has a proof of 103, and this one retails for $200. And finally, we have the Brown Label. Now, this is a true cask strength, meaning the proof will vary from bottle to bottle, since there is no water added to proof it down, and this retails for about $300. Now, as you can tell, this is a really good story. I mean, you're getting 6 to 8 year old out of Warehouse H. We don't know the mash, but in the end, is it like really worth the money? Well, for $150, you could be drinking some serious bourbon out there. You could be drinking Wild Turkey Master's Keep 17-year-old. You could be having a little Michter 10-year-old. Or you can even have some Booker's Pigskin. I mean, for $150, there's a lot of bourbon out there. And when we talk about 6 to 8 years, well, you could buy at least 5 bottles of bourbon under $30 or at $30 that are aged for a minimum of 6 to 8 years. For me, the price and the hype of this bourbon is a little too much. Is it good? Yes, it's good, but how good is it? Well, let's take a look at the tasting notes. On the collar, you get this beautiful deep amber color with some deep gold. On the nose, you get these really sweet layers of wood that are mixed into this smoke that moves the chocolate and dried fruit as it expands, meaning it just fills the room. And this is just very refined and lovely. On the mouthfeel, it is delicate in wood layers that are sweet into this lovely vanilla that turns the acidity into some beautiful wood tannins. As you get chocolate, caramel, toffee, dried fruits that just push this beautiful spiciness of the oak into a very, very long finish. The bourbon in here is delicious. Do I think that this is good bourbon? Of course it's good. I mean, this is Blanton's. Everybody freaks out on it. Everybody chases this down and just like loses their shit over this bourbon. Is it worth $150? I don't think so. Is the packaging good? Yes, the packaging is great. I mean, do I think that it's weird that people collect the stoppers? This one has an S on it, so now I would have to chase the whole Blanton without the S now to try to line them up. Like, yeah, it's a great marketing strategy. Yes, it's from the famous Warehouse H. That's a metal structure. Ooh, I'm losing my shit. But for all of the people that are chasing these down and just whoring it and thinking that you're gonna resell it for 5 to 10 times the price that you paid in 10 or 15 years, it's not really serious. And please stop doing it. I like this bourbon. It's a great bourbon. But for $150, you could be drinking some serious single malts out there. 18-year-old, you could be drinking some crazy bourbons out there. I think that the hype on this is just a little too much. And people are really freaking out over it. In the end, yes, it's great bourbon, but it's just not worth $150. And anybody that tells you that it's worth more than that and that they have a few years back and this and that and they're making stories in their head because they're spending too much time on Reddit comparing this and that, they are just out of their minds. All right, that's gonna do it for me. I'm OBG for tastingskills.com. Please give it a thumbs up, and if you have questions or you think that I'm absolutely wrong, well, leave a comment below because I would love to hear your speculation on what Blanton is actually worth, because I seriously don't think it's worth $150. It's worth $80 at best at this point. All right, that's gonna do it for me. Please remember, my friend, stay sober. Peace.